Here it is. All right, so here we start. So the topic of that brings us together today is life stress for all types of professionals or people without a job. Stress from the perspective of a moral injury. And I'll explain in detail later what I mean by that. What I hope to bring today is an ethical perspective, a perspective on values, on what we believe in, what we have, regarding what we are seeking, which is probably health, well-being, and regarding our professions, what we do while we are in this search. And these are my credentials. I told you, I can be familiar, and I'm also a professional. I'm a licensed psychologist, still affiliated with Emory University in the role of an adjunct assistant professor. And I'm also a senior instructor for CBCT, Cognitively Based Compassion Training, this mindfulness and compassion protocol that I will present today as well. Those are my credentials that hopefully give some credibility to what I would like to present today. But I also want to bring my heart here. I want to speak from a place of authenticity and without disregarding my personal experiences, as you have your own, which are extremely important in this search for health and well-being. And I'll make a commitment to be as little charlatan as possible, meaning I will not be only the one who will be talking. It's not about my words only. I'll give you the opportunity to give me your opinion on things, and I'll try to remain authentic, whatever I say, whatever argument I make, or whatever theory I defend. And let's play the game. Some people want continuing education credits, and for that we need objectives, and now one day objectives as well. I have an intention, I have a desire with this presentation, which more or less is included here. First, I would like to put our decision making in life and in our professions as in context, as a search for ultimately well-being, for health, which is a universal value. And therefore it pertains the topic of ethics, what we value, and also pertains decision-making. How do we go about choosing what hopefully will bring well-being and health? I'll discuss at length the fact that in this search, others contribute to our well-being and to our decision-making, and we contribute to theirs. It seems very obvious. In fact, much of what I will be sharing with you today is perhaps nothing new. I will be reminding you of things that you already know, but hopefully consolidating these opinions and offering you empirical evidence for what you otherwise already think and believe. And finally, I'll dedicate a little bit of time to present cognitively based compassion training, this mindfulness and compassion protocol that I teach and I have practiced since 2007, which is ultimately, regardless of the word meditation or compassion, which can be a little bit threatening perhaps for some, is a training in making decisions, a method to pay attention to what is fundamental for our well-being. And that actually includes others. So let's get into the topic. And this is our first chance to share a little bit who we are, where we come from. So I'm gonna actually launch a poll. Feel free to answer or not. But there are two questions. Some you have already answered, who are you? But this is a question regarding your profession. And then second, I hope you can see it. Why are you here? And please choose the best option. I know they are not uh, mutually exclusive, but just pick the one that perhaps answer best the question that I'm asking. All right, let's give a little bit of a chance to people to answer. Okay, we have 50% of people voting. And again, these segments in which the gallery are seen will not be in the video, but feel free to answer or to observe. What we are seeing so far is that most of us, well, I still say that I'm in research in academics. Technically, I'm an independent professional now. So I have that in common with two of our participants. And then most people are in the job of research and academics working for somebody else. A few are in healthcare. And then why are we here? Most of us are concerned about the amount of stress around us. I don't know if that shows. It was, yeah, amount of stress around us. I think I place myself in this category. There are some people that are also under a lot of stress and would like to do better. I was there only a few months ago, very clearly 1 year ago, when I left my last job at the institution where I worked. And then there are four who are friends of mine and just wanted to say hi, which is legitimate as well. I hope that as a consequence, you learn something and you have a good time. All right. Thank you for participating. So we know a little bit. I'm going to share the results for a second, and we are going to go back to the presentation. Now, we know a little bit more about who we are and what we are doing here. And there's no lie about the topic of this talk. The title is almost grandiose. It's big and talks about life stress as moral injury. Okay. I'm going to So what is that? What do I understand by moral injury? The term was first used by Andrew Jameson in 1984 when he was talking about burnout in nurses. And he actually spoke about moral distress, psychological conflict during ethical dilemmas. And we may think that ethical dilemmas are something abstract away from our daily life, but really we run into them all the time. If we understand ethical dilemmas, situations in which decisions have to be made between two courses of action, often more, either of which entails transgressing the moral principle of doing no harm, or any moral principle, but the most important one of all is really doing no harm, doing what you think it's better to help others and yourself. And there are many of these situations in healthcare providers, in nurses as well, in which there's no absolute certainty on what is going to cause uh, no harm to somebody, what is going to be the course of action that is going to bring the most health, the most benefit. And then also many situations in which provider and client do not agree on the decisions that will bring the least amount of harm. And I was there not long ago, years ago, actually, when I was starting this journey of becoming a clinical psychologist, and I got cold feet. Let me show you a segment of this video that I actually present in my website. I'll find the time right now. Here it is. Let me stop right here. I want to share if you are listening to the audio. Are you? No. Thank you. I'm glad I asked. So I need to make sure I do that. Yes, I had forgotten to share the audio. Okay, let's try again. I apologize for that. Okay.
Is that I got really cold feet when I started to work with people, because my original plan was to become a clinical psychologist, but I became so scared of people's problems. I remember sleepless nights thinking, how do I help people? This is so much deeper than I ever thought. So I decided to change fields, and I started to work with chimpanzees.
Samuel went on to research the psychology of primates in Atlanta, Georgia.
I actually did my dissertation on emotional behavior in chimpanzees, which were a safe species. They are so incredibly smart, and I don't think we even start to imagine what they are capable of. The opportunity arose to work with children with autism. I had a little bit of experience working with children at a summer camp, and then I had, my graduate courses in clinical psychology. So it seemed like I was a good fit for that position at the time. When I decided to go back and work with children, had I overcome my fear of people suffering? I had not, but children are different. Children, don't have a baggage. They cry their lungs out, and then they're over it. I thought I had found my niche working with the children. There was still one part that was very, very hard for me, which was actually the parents suffering. I give diagnosis every week, 4 times a week, and I still cannot imagine really what it must be like to have a child that you adore, that is your everything, and somebody tells you the plan you had for that child is different. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of presence to realize that plan doesn't have to be worse, it's just different.
So this was my moral distress. I mean, there were different aspects of it. At the beginning, it was just the idea that how could I know what was the best decision to bring no harm to the people I was seeing? And I sort of resolved that, understanding that it was not all my responsibility, but I could do what I could. I could offer what I shared, what I knew, and that may be helpful. And I was allowed to make mistakes as well. So coming back from the field of chimpanzees, I also found it easier to work with children because I saw their potential. And then the question came again, the moral dilemma of hurting those parents' expectations when you give them news that in the best eye are not ideal, but it's relatively easy to understand that you do that because they will get the benefit long term of that bad day when you give them a diagnosis. So that is part of our jobs in healthcare and many other professions when you really service others and you want to really do a job that is useful for others. But then another definition of moral injury came in the late 90s with Jonathan Shea working with veterans, saying that there was something uh, called moral injury that was the injury to an individual's moral conscience and values resulting from an act of perceived moral transgression, which produces profound emotional guilt and shame, and in some cases also a sense of betrayal, anger, and profound moral disorientation. So the ethical dilemma here goes directly against the individual's values. And I found more than a year ago myself experiencing this. And I want to, even before I read what I have on the slide, I want to say this is nothing about my supervisors, about the leadership of the centers for which I worked, which were two when I finished working for somebody else. It says nothing about the institution, not even, well, about the system, the country, the dynamics. Uh, if it says something about somebody, it is about every one of us, including myself. And I knew this, and I saw clearly that there was no one person's at fault, but that did not do anything to make my feeling of moral distress, of moral injury, and ethical distress any lesser. And I wrote the following on my blog. Again, you can find it in my website. My compassionate behavior with my clients and colleagues, trying always to do a little bit more, was helping to perpetuate a general and just system in which workers are squeezed more and more and clients receive less and less. This was going radically against my set of principles, my highest value of doing no harm. In the short term, yes, I was conforming to that, solving problems, but I could see very clearly that in the long run, I was hurting others and hurting myself. And the feeling that I was not getting any better, I was not doing anything to improve that situation, really put me in a situation of high distress. Um, I addressed it by becoming an independent professional. That is not what I'm going to say is the solution. It worked for me, and one may consider what is success. Maybe in the long run, it's been a year now, and I mean, there are things that have worked out, things that have not worked out as well. Overall, I sleep better. I have more peace of mind. I don't feel that moral conflict, but it is yet to be seen whether this is a feasible alternative. It is certainly not one that will make me work less, but in reality, I don't mind that. I don't mind the amount of work as much as knowing that my work serves the purpose that is aligned with what I want. And this is what I'm talking about when I decided to use the phrase moral injury. The bigger perspective, more than a work overload, really a consistency between my values and what I do. And what we want overall, uh, regardless of our context, our circumstances, is to be able to succeed in every situation and to come afloat, to do well. So this is a very popular word nowadays, resilience, which has two, more or less the same, but two meanings. One that has to do more with the physical world, which includes the capability of a strained body to recover its size and shape after deformation caused especially by compressive stress. And that describes very well the idea that human natural balance is homeostasis, and we want to go back there. We want to restore there. We want to restore that. And but I like even better the second meaning, which is more psychological, which includes the ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And I like that because there's really not a way to go back, is there? We cannot go back in time. We cannot replicate the same circumstances that brought us balance and health at one point, but we can find it in new circumstances. We can evolve and adapt personally and collectively. And as The human species, we have done that because we are here, we have survived. So if we are stressed, it's our turn, our opportunity to do something with that. And yes, go back to balance personally and collectively, but to a new balance, the same as families with a diagnosis want to adapt to a new situation and don't want to come back because that's impossible, but they want to do well in the new situation. They want to recover and evolve. And this is ultimately what we want to do. This is our intention. We can make it concrete in our circumstances, but this is where we want to be, in the zone of resilience. So I'm talking about intention, what it is that we want. And I often cite this article by Shapiro and collaborators in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, precisely, that describes meditation techniques, and I like to say life itself, with these three elements in which we seek something. We have an intention. We do something to get to where we want to go. We have attention to reality, to our landscape, to ourselves at this point in time. And then whatever we do to get from where we are to where we want to be, we do it a certain way with a certain attitude. So it's so important to have a little bit of clarity on our intention and to pay attention to our intention, because often we don't even know what we want. Often as well, we think we want something, but we end up not wanting it when we get it. Very often as well, we want things that seem to be opposite. So how is that possible? And not to be hard on anybody, but it's a difficult business to know what you want. I often encourage people to go back to childhood, to the original reason why people started their job, their desire to be of service in healthcare, but also in other professions, to bring back the joy and bring back the consistency. It's very important to know where we want to go. And we are going to do another exercise with a poll that will help us bring some clarity over this intention. So I would like, and this can be a short meditation or not, but hopefully we'll find a comfortable posture that will help our body to be centered, that will help our minds to be centered as well, and to engage into this reflection as good as possible. Uh, I generally recommend to put to leave the feet flat on the floor, to straighten our back without it becoming rigid, open our chest, overall scan our body for points of tension and find whatever posture is comfortable for you here and now. It also helps to think of a rope pulling from the crown of our head and then relaxing, making the head leaning forward a little bit. And if you may, please close your eyes, relax the muscles of your face. You don't have to close your eyes if that makes you nervous. We can rest the hands on our legs or next to the belly. And we are going to take one deep breath to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and therefore induce a relaxation response just once with all our might through our nostrils is possible. And this is how we create favorable conditions to do this exercise as well as possible. And what I'm going to ask you to think, to allow your mind to bring is a situation hopefully from the past, a memory of a recent event or an event happening long ago, when you feel you had that feeling of well-being, of ease, of health. It can be described in many ways. I'm asking you to allow that memory, that image of a situation, a moment in which you didn't worry about anything in particular. Perhaps for a moment, everything was okay. And it may take a few moments, but the first or second image that comes to mind, go for it and simply visit all the details of this memory. This is an authentic, real experience from your past, informing you of what brings you fulfillment, security. And we rest the attention in all the details of this situation, reviewing them over and over again, allowing any sensation to manifest and enjoying that sensation if it comes. Thinking where we were, if we were alone or with other people or pets, the sounds, the things that we were doing, if anything. And if if you may, you can also try to discover what it was that gave you that feeling of ease, of comfort. Or perhaps we don't need to be so mental and just rest in that sensation. And think for a moment or two how our world would change if we were able to bring this sensation to new circumstances, new moments, even to challenging ones, in which everything suddenly seems to be in place, in order, and how other people's worlds would change if we were able to bring that to them as well. And you can open your eyes if you close them, and let's do a poll and find out a little bit about this moment. So the title of this poll is "What did I value in the past?" The moment that I just remembered had to do with professional achievement, had to do with material gain, had to do with connecting with other people, had to do with connecting with animals or nature, or perhaps I didn't get it. I didn't really feel it. I didn't understand the exercise that is possible as well, or it had something to do with something completely different. And also, I didn't mention, if you have questions along the talk, don't hesitate to type them on the chat, or even, you know, turn on your microphone and say it out loud. Again, this doesn't have to be very formal. All right, so we have 11 people answering. I'm gonna close the poll now. Okay, now I'm gonna show you the results. For most of us, the moment that in the past we appreciated as giving us information about what it is that we seek, what we want, what makes us happy, was had to do with connecting with other people. For a significant minority, I may say, also had to do with connecting with animals or nature. But I want to say that, ultimately, although we seem to seek in life material gain and professional achievement, and it is connection with others or with something else, with a landscape. It's awareness of ourselves in context, which brings that amazing sensation of being fulfilled, of not having to worry about anything and being at rest. So, this is what the past tells us about what it is that we seek in the future. And it is a very helpful way to have clarity on our intention. Let me go back to the slide presentation again. So paying attention to our intention pays off. Having clarity and using techniques to explore our future intention, in this case, looking back at the past, is extremely helpful. We also want to pay attention to where we start. I see these three elements, intention, attention, and attitude, described in many other different ways. Intention, the heart; attention, the head; attitude, the hands; intention, the why; attention, the what; attitude, the how; intention, where we want to go; attention, where we are; attitude, how we get there. So all this to say that it's extremely important not only to know where we want to go, but where we are, how we are starting. And I think these are three important sources of information about where we are, the scenery, the context that we occupy. And all of us have something very personal, which is our own experience. But let me tell you, not as personal as we may believe, because we count very significantly the experience of our neighbor, of our friends, of our family members. And that counts as well as something really important in our lives that gives us information on where we are. Actually, I didn't mention that the intention is very collective as well, because what we want has to do with often with others, but also with things that we have learned. So, so much to say for how individual all these things are. Again, we are talking about what do we pay attention to, and that comes from personal experience, number one, that can be the experience of close ones. Number two, it also comes from conventional knowledge, like the law, culture, um, and also, very importantly, by empirically validated information, science. We would be very naive to disregard the scientific information. However, this is not all, not just personal experience and common knowledge gives us information about where we are. Um, Also, there is a third level or third source of information that is post-conventional wisdom. And this includes the fact that there are exceptions, even for science. There are moments in which the law is questionable. And, and that ability also must be included in this search for information about the scenery that we inhabit. And if you have a background in psychology like me, this will remind you a lot of Kohlberg's stages of moral development, indeed. But I see these three pillars of information in many other areas. Um, the more uh, the more aligned the three of them are, the clearer we are on what we see, what is our landscape that we inhabit right here, right now. And truth being the conformity to reality, and also, not the same for everyone, would be the summary of these three experiences. We often face contradictions because the three sources of information contradict each other. We often disagree with our neighbor, and collectively we are also at a point when we are I'd like to say we are evolving from conventional knowledge to post-conventional wisdom. And it's not a smooth transition, but we are learning that there are exceptions for everything, but those exceptions do not invalidate the rules that we know because they are precisely exceptions. I could talk at length about this, but my point is how collective these these sources of information are, as well as our intention. Finally, it also pays off to pay attention to our attitude, how we are doing what we are doing. And this as well, my friends, is also a very collective um, phenomenon. I'd like to offer a short segment of a video speaking about attitude, about what is the best attitude. You start to see again that this is not a right through. They're not a good solution, a good outcome. Um, it is rather a method of discovering for each one of us what is the best outcome in their circumstances. So what is the best attitude? And there's a principle that says, well, the best attitude should be one that is not too much, neither too little, just the right effort, uh, with ease and with love. So precisely about love is this video that I'm going to show you. Give me a second while I find the minute. And this girl talks about what love is, and she precisely talks about a method in which it's not too much, not too little. And that is the loving attitude that we want to implement, depending on the circumstances, depending on the moment. Each circumstance and each moment requiring a different attitude, but always loving. So, oops, sorry about that. Okay.
Cinta itu seperti telur.
Love is like an egg, she said.
Jadi cinta itu harus dipegang seperti telur. Kalau telur kita pegang erat-erat, dia akan pecah. Tapi kalau kita pegang dia dengan benar, kalau kita pegang dia tidak erat-erat atau dipegangnya terlalu santai, dia akan jatuh. Tapi kalau dipegang dengan benar.
Come si fa a essere felici con...
So this is the attitude that we want. Do we have a loving attitude when we deal with things? Well, we try. We often overexert. Sometimes we don't do enough. I think the next slide speaks about how collectively deal with our profession, with the things that we want to do. And ideally, the point of balance of health, of well-being would be not too much effort, not too little effort, considering that we as human beings value both things on both ends. We value innovation, we value traditions. How couldn't we? What humanity have learned over thousands of years, how couldn't we value that? And we value productivity, but we value leisure. In fact, we will be more productive the better rested we are. We value competition, but competition doesn't even make sense if they're not groups that work together to compete with another group. So we value both as well, immediate results and long-term view. How long should we delay gratification to make our effort worthwhile and not too much work? It's a very personal question, but I find, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, that collectively, there's an emphasis on the right side, on innovation, productivity, and competition, termed the three goddesses by Spanish philosopher and economist Jose Luis San Pedro, that passed away recently. And he spoke about goddesses not in a good way precisely. I added their immediacy. This is the individualistic society that values competition, disregarding that, again, cooperation brought us where we are as much as competition. I'm not saying that all the things on the right side are not desirable. They are, of course, but I think there's too much emphasis on them. And the balance on how we do things is off. So this is our method in life, and we are going to learn very soon that it's also a method that describes well meditation, in which we pay attention to our intention, to our scenery, to how we search for what we need, to our attitude, and this is no more than meditation. I was scared of the word when I started in 2007, but we are only talking about mind training. Self-regulation practices derived from Buddhism, but secular, that focus on training attention and awareness in order to bring mental processes under greater voluntary control. Compassion meditation adds social regulation practices. And I'm gonna talk in a little bit about how social regulation is fundamental for self-emotional regulation and self-emotional regulation for social regulation. In reality, this is a good deal in the market. It's very fashionable and very popular now. And I'm glad it is, honestly, because it's as feasible and affordable as it gets. It's way more affordable than paying a psychotherapist. It also has a ton of empirical data supporting these mind training techniques. And it's also secular, meaning that it's universal. It's compatible with any religious or philosophical tradition or with the absence of it. It's at the same time extremely personal. Again, because there's not a read-through, there's not a defined outcome. Each one finds out their own personal outcome. But what it is a practice. And this is my friend explaining how practice is important. So whatever we do, either sitting on the cushion or walking or resting the attention on a task, we'd better do it and do it very deliberately because we will get better.
So my question to you today is, what do you practice every day? What do you practice? Because what you practice, you will get good at. What do you practice? Do you practice joy in your life? Do you practice peace in your life? Do you practice happiness in your life? Or do you practice a lot of complaining? Because if you complain, you will get very good at it. And you will get so good at it that you will find fault with everything. Even when there's no fault that a layman cannot see, you, being an expert, will see it. What do you practice? Do you practice anger? Because if you practice anger, you will get very good at it. And you will get so good at it that the most trivial you'll think will make you angry. Like sitting in an airplane and watching the sea across from you somehow looks better than the one you've been given. And that is so unfair of the airlines. What do you practice? Do you practice being worried? Because if you practice being worried, you will get very good at it. And you will get so good at it that everything will worry you, including the buffalo you don't have. So I propose, if this is true that it's a question of practice, then I propose you practice joy.
So there you go. You can practice everything. And this is what meditation is, a practice of attention, of paying attention. And just the practice itself, the method itself, doesn't really require a lot of concepts, a lot of explanation, narrative, or visualizations. And that would be non-analytical meditation, less analytical, because we talk less to ourselves, we engage less in deliberate introspection, but we allow insights to emerge. There is this strong suggestion, which I wholeheartedly agree, that just by paying attention, um, important things emerge. The fact that others are important emerges. The fact that your well-being is extremely important emerges. But then there is the help of, in this method, of concepts, narrative, reflection, introspection, and then we turn into a more analytical or conceptual meditation in which you suggest which topics are worthy of your attention. And one topic that is such is others, compassion. And I'm still not a big fan of the word, particularly because in the Spanish language, compassion is pity. But there's no better word to talk about thinking of others. And it's by no means pity. It's really the awareness of others. If you are aware of others, you have to be aware of yourself. And you are aware of their distress. And that is accompanied by a desire to alleviate it, just for your own interest, your own sake, because you are not comfortable knowing that others are suffering. Of course, to do that, you have to be very clear on what are your limits and what are your potential. And so the idea comes that, again, self-emotional regulation and social regulation, the two aspects that are emphasized in intervention in autism precisely, are two sides of the same coin. The better self-regulated you are, the greater your social skills, the greater your social relationships, the better regulated you are. And this vignette has the typical example of an adult helping a minor or somebody who requires assistance on a plane, and the instruction to put the oxygen mask first on herself or himself, the adult. And I want to say that putting the mask on yourself, if you're an adult first, it's directly related to the benefit of your the minor, the person who needs help that is sitting next to you. You do it for him, for her. But then, yeah, of course, you do it for yourself as well. But it's in the best interest of the two that you do that in that sequence. So, and that willingness to protect that minor is so natural that you don't even question it. It's your life that is depending on their well-being. If something happens to that minor, you would be devastated. So and the wisest way, the wisest strategy is to protect yourself first, because otherwise you put at risk the minor and yourself. So all this to say that if we allow feeling naturally the concern for others, and we consider naturally our limits, our potential, our ability to make decisions that will benefit me, we cannot help but including others in the equation, and we'll realize as well that helping others helps me. So it's in my best interest to take care of others, and it's in their interest that I take care of myself. So life, it's a collective, shared enterprise. And there has been the suggestion about this in religious and philosophical traditions for thousands of years. Now science is backing up this idea that working for others is the health thing to do, the healthy thing to do. I brought this quote from Alexis de Tocqueville, a French philosopher, very influential on American politics in the 19th century, who said the firmest support for the common good comes from enlightened self-interest, the realization that we are all better off if we work together. Well, let me tell you, fortunately, we don't even have to be so enlightened to come to this realization and to work for the group. We do that very naturally. So it's in us, it's a biological instinct that we can expand and bring to awareness for clarity and to even make more sound, better decisions. Franz de Waal, this primatology, he worked with uh, several species of monkeys and also chimpanzees and bonobos. He wrote, "Don't believe anyone who says that since nature is based on a struggle for life, we need to live like this as well. Many animals survive not by eliminating each other or keeping everything for themselves, but by cooperating and sharing." And now he cites Hobbes, the English philosopher, saying this applies most definitely to pack hunters such as wolves, but also to our closest relatives, the primates. If man is wolf to man, this is the quote by Hobbes. Franz de Waal says, we are so in every sense, not just the negative one. We would not be where we are today had our ancestors be socially aloof. So this is the idea of, finally, cognitively based compassion training, this protocol that I practice and I teach, expanding that biological instinct to really seek heaven on earth, to come home, to bring this zone of well-being, to go back to our point of balance. And it is a sequence of 7 modules, counting on this introductory module, in which we do an exercise very similar to the one we did moments ago, for motivation, to remember what it is that we desire, and also to prime our brain to sort of create the predisposition to experience that that goal is feasible, it was real, it can be made real again. Then there are 2 modules, and this is taught in weekly sessions typically, although I also organize intensive courses. After the nurturing moment, we go to these non-analytical mindfulness modules. And this is about practicing paying attention. You choose a sensation, a task, walking, cooking, and you rest your attention there and you experience what it is like, and often how fulfilling, how pleasant it is to pay attention to something. Then you use that focused attention to bring it to your internal world, mental world, your reality, your thoughts as they project the world as you experience it. This is still mindfulness. Then we go to the analytical modules, 3 to 6, starting with self-compassion before we go to compassion, because again, it's extremely important to know your limits and your potential, to be aware that you have done what you did what you could until now. How could have you done more than you could? And now you have yet another opportunity. And with every decision you make, you either win or you learn, and that is all right. And again, being very realistic about your limits and as well your potential actually can only bring you closer to your goals, your intention of well-being, which then you realize is very related to others' well-being, and other suffering gets in the way of you being comfortable. And again, you examine yourself and whatever you can do, whatever you cannot do, and come at peace with it, come to terms with your decision on what it is that you can do, and you will do it and feel great. What it is that you cannot do and you won't do it and you will feel great. So in between self-compassion and compassion, there are these 2 modules in which the suggestion is made that others being very different are not so different from us, and others have a lot of influence on ourselves, and we have a lot of influence on them. So there's this interconnection. that defines or describes humanity as a multiple organism in which we are dependent upon each other, and this is all working on thoughts, on projections, on appraisal. So it's not very different from cognitive behavioral therapy in reality. Sustained with pro-social aspect, this kindness towards others, this inclusion of others in my well-being. And I would like, before I tell you that there will be a course on starting on March 7th up to April 13th, that I will be co-teaching with Chandra Elm. And it's coming, so if you're interested, please go to my website. I would like to do a little bit of an exercise on self-compassion and do a poll at the end to see what we find. And let me stop sharing for a second, and let me read what I would like you to try to humor me today and see a little bit of what self-compassion may look like. I would like you to think of a mildly uncomfortable situation that you experienced recently. And like with the nurturing moment, we allow this to come to mind. Hopefully it will be mildly uncomfortable, but whatever comes up, you may choose to accept it or try to find another one. And once you have the mildly uncomfortable situation, I'm going to say, well, you may experience that as a failure or as an important lesson. But if we didn't win, we'll try to learn. If we already think that we learned something, let's consolidate that learning. So let's think about this situation and let's try to find the true source of our discomfort. It was probably something that I wanted, you wanted, but we didn't get, or something that you did not want that you got. So think about it for a second, and you can as well adopt this comfortable posture that will allow you to reflect on this uncomfortable situation and try again to find that source of the discomfort. And we go there, and like we did with the nurturing moment, we recreate the situation, the moment where it became obvious that something was off, what we were doing, if we were with somebody else, even the place. Let's revisit the details of this situation. Trying not to be too involved with the emotional aspect of it, because at the end, these are thoughts. It's not the situation, it's not us. Of course, we are doing this without having practiced a little bit of attention techniques, but it's for the sake of the exercise. Let's give it a try and again think of what gives us the discomfort. What was the thing that we wanted that we didn't get, or the thing that we didn't want that we had. And after this minimal exercise, let's answer to the poll. And the topic is self-compassion. The question is what I just read. Think of a mildly uncomfortable situation. We already did. If we didn't win, let's try to learn. And let's think what answer best describes how you feel about it now. Again, they are not exactly exclusive, but try to choose one that best describes your impression of this situation. Did your discomfort come from trying too hard? You were trying too much to do something, and and that created discomfort, do you realize that you could have tried harder and you didn't? And this is where the discomfort is. Or perhaps you realize that you did what you could, but the outcome was not in your hands. Or for some of you, it may be too stressing to go back to that situation now. So you're going to try later, perhaps. And there's the other option. So we have 7 people who have answered. 8, I'll give you 9. Okay. And I'm rushing you. Forgive me for doing that, because this is an extremely helpful exercise. And I want to show you the poll, and I want to congratulate all of you that said that realized that your discomfort came from trying too hard. So it's so difficult to think of these. And I want to congratulate those who, that person who said that, acknowledged that he or she could have tried harder and didn't, because both groups have learned that the effort is important. The effort should be leveled, and too much effort doesn't bring us happiness, and too little obviously doesn't either. I also would like to congratulate those that realized that, hey, I did everything I could, but the outcome was not in my hands, because yes, guess what? Discomfort is impossible to get rid of. There's discomfort in this life. That is a fact. Suffering because of the discomfort is the optional thing. So 5 of our audience are already there with this situation. And I'm sure we have all felt it at one time or another. This peace with events, even though we don't like it. This is where we want to be. It would have been as well, okay to say, I'm not going to think about it now. That's also wise. If you're not ready, if you're becoming too emotional, let's try later if it works or not. And then someone else answered other. I wonder who that person is, or what they meant by other. But if you want to, Laura said other. Do you mind sharing with the rest of us, Laura?
No, I don't.
Thank you.
We're working with diversity, inclusion, and equity at my university, and we had an incident, and there was a big panel with the president, the CFO, and the deans and the provost, and they were talking about, we need to improve, and what should we do, and they're trying to be proactive, but they kept talking about minorities and minorities and minorities, and we don't like to be called minorities. So I sent an article, a link to an article about that, and I saw all these people blush, and then they stopped using that terminology for the rest of the presentation, which was great. But then I started doubting myself. Should I have done that? Are they going to be mad at me? Did I make them uncomfortable? Is my sabbatical going to be, all these crazy things. And, it was just this mental gymnastics that I had to take a moment and take a breath and think about self-compassion. I did the right thing, and I can't control what they think or what they do, but I did my best to contribute to what they say they want to support. But so it was that self-compassion thing, you're your own worst enemy sometimes.
Yes, you can even be your worst enemy applying this exercise with self-compassion. Am I doing enough self-compassion? Am I doing too much? Am I thinking overthinking this? I'm not thinking enough. But it is, you are in the process, Laura. Welcome to life. As the sooner you realize that, part of this discomfort is the process of coming to a solution, the better you will feel sooner. That's it. Ultimately, what brings you peace is coming to terms with an agreement with yourself. I've done enough, or I have not. If I've done too much, I'll try to do less in a similar situation in the future. If I haven't done enough, I will try to do more in a similar situation in the future. Is this a habit, or is this just specific? You come to terms, and then you learn. And then you may even review your conclusions, and that's all. You either win or you learn. So congratulations to all. We are almost done with the presentation. I wanted to leave time for questions, but I'm always overly optimistic on what I want to cover. but we are almost there. So, and I hope you saw the results. It took me a while to share these polls results. Very interesting indeed. Let's go back to the presentation, and I already announced the course starting on March 7th. Feel free to contact me if you're interested in taking this course. There's already a lot of research articles on CBCT, and including clinical trials, randomized clinical trials. Not all of these are RTCs, randomized clinical trials, but many are, and with different populations. Some of them are in the process of being published, particularly with professionals, medical doctors, nurses, but also cancer survivors, students, of course, veterans with PTSD, patients with VIH, including my own study with families of individuals with autism. And I wanted to bring very briefly this latest article. I got the permission from the first author, Marian, who is here today, to show you. It's almost just taken out of the oven, but I was very interested in this study because it's a very short intervention. Brief intervention of 16 days with 66 students, in which there was a mix of mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, mindfulness, self-compassion, and CBCT, cognitively based compassion training. And I think that speaks a lot about what works. May be different for each population, but something works. And still many critical voices say what it is exactly that is working. And it would be very interesting and very important to know, but at least we know that something is working to decrease anxiety and stress, and to increase self-compassion, as shown in this sample in a very brief intervention, 16 days. I was really impressed. And this happened at the onset of the COVID lockdown, so it is very relevant. So just to bring us back home to conclusions, to something that we already know, but it's important to remember, to keep on bring our attention on what we want, and how our landscape is shared. And we often obsess over one single detail of these, getting lost in what we don't have, or focusing on what is very unrealistic or impossible, which for this mom, I'm going to read in a moment, was the diagnosis of her children. She had 2 children. She did not want this diagnosis. Well, guess what? She was candidate for a mental breakdown if you don't want reality as it is. And her obsessing on this reality that could not be made her very narrow-minded, and forget the broader perspective that in a way had the solution to her own frustration, personal frustration. Let me see, and you can see for yourselves what I mean. This was from a book, Cure, A Journey into the Science of Mind Over Body. And it was an interview with one of the participants in my study, with families with individuals with autism. During the course, Nina says she realized that autism had come to define her children in her eyes. All you see is a burden. It was robbing me of so much I could give to them. Instead of being overwhelmed by her own stress and misery, she started to view the world from her kids' perspective and to see them as people in their own right. In the class, I released a feeling of entitlement, she says, the feeling that I was supposed to have a life without these challenges. Who doesn't have this feeling? I may pause, which is legitimate. I don't want to suffer, but the more we insist on things that are not realistic, the more we suffer. And her releasing that feeling also allowed her to see the perspective of her children who didn't know better. They were little, but were people in their own right with their own differences, and seeing herself as not the main character of the story was the helpful thing for her to overcome that stress that she was stuck in. With that single thought, I read again, much of the stress in Fina's life disintegrated. Instead of feeling bitter and resentful, she said, I'm enjoying being with them. Not that her life became comfortable, it was not. But accepting this, whatever that meant for Fina, tolerating this, not obsessing over something that is impossible, and including in her story the points of view of others that were very important, and not just her kids, but the system, the family, the community, made her realize she was not alone in this story. It was not her doing. She was not personally responsible for what was going on, although she suffered it. And therefore, the answers were beyond herself, and the story was much greater than what her narrow short-sightedness had allowed her to see. I hope I made sense. I want to conclude here with a message of hope and of compassion for all of us. If we can only remember that what we want in life, the landscape that we inhabit, where we are, and our attitudes, how we try to get to where we want to be from where we are, is a collective phenomenon rather than an individual phenomenon. Our stress and our discomfort is a collective phenomenon too. So to resolve this, to get where we want, I need others and others need me. And because I cannot do it all and I cannot do it alone. But I can do something. Within my possibilities and with my limitations, I can do something to address this stress. Of course, I will do better the more attention, and the more I practice attention, the more attention I pay to myself and others. There are an endless list of people that I would like to thank for which I don't have all the time. You know who you are. It's again an endless list of families, children, adults, collaborators, friends, mentors, students, and I hope that with this sentence I really convey that I'm in debt to you all, and I'll try my best to take care of you because of you, but also because of me, because it's in my interest to take care of you, and I know it's in your interest as well that I'll take care of myself, and I will do that. Thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing now and stop as well the recording.